Very weird there. Very weird. My music cut off before I even wanted it to. I don't know. That's weird. StreamYard's being weird. But hey, hi, hello. How are you guys? How's everybody doing tonight? How's everybody doing this evening? If you missed our members only live today, well, you missed it. So if you want to go check it out, you can. It's there under the members only tab. So I see everybody's been chit-chatting in the chat. It's good to see everybody. I came on a little early tonight. I wanted to come on at 8:15, but I didn't get on quite on time. But instead of the 9:15 usual, because I knew that this is going to be a little bit longer because I was going to read over the autopsy report, and also Joseph Scott Morgan did a podcast, so I thought we would listen in on that as well. So I thought we would do a couple things tonight. So welcome in, Ladybug and Mary Beth. See your number one, number two. Look at that, Catherine. She's always close in here. Hey, Faith. It's good to see everybody. I won't go through all of your names, but I'll go through most of them. Hey, Sirius. Hey, Pandan. If I see them all, I'll say it. Hey, Groovy Nikki. Hey, Ro. Hey, Faith. I think I said hi to Faith, but that's okay. We'll say it again, huh? It's good to see you, Sirius. It's good to see you. Now I feel like I'm going to miss someone. Hey, Squeaky. Oh, going to have Thanksgiving? French frozen pizza. Hey, we had tacos. What was that? Last night? I have the best man in the world. Hummingbird. I didn't know he could hear me. And I was like, I really wanted tacos. I could have made them, but like 2 seconds later, it's like he must hear my annoying voice in his sleep or something, It's probably just poor guy. And he jumps up and he's all of a sudden he has a pan out of, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, making you tacos. And I was like, you're fabulous. You're amazing. I thought he was going to eat some too, but he didn't even eat any. And then it made me feel so bad. So I made him food today. I made him homemade chili today with some really good, I put some love in that. And he ate the whole pot. And I made enough for like 2 days. So that made me feel good. Hey, Cat's Life. Hey, Roro. Hey, DM. Hey, Mike. Hey, Sailor. Hey, Lori. How you doing? Welcome in, everybody. It's good to see you guys. Like I said, it's always good to see everybody. Sunday Doodles. Lord Mama. You always have to replay. Aw. She just tried to skip the intro. I would skip the intro too. Sometimes I say hi to too many people, I'm one of those people. I say hi to everybody. Hey, Lenora. Hey, Betsy. I always feel like I'm going to miss someone, though. And then I'm like, man, I'm going to miss someone. Hey, Elizabeth's cat. That's so cute. It's in a bird bath. Your cat is laying in a bird bath. Now that is adorable. Really, Hummingbird? Well, we try not to ignore anybody. If we ignore you, then we really don't. It's because we just don't see you. If I ignore you, it's because I really don't see you. That's just because I've got vision in one eye out over here. So, hey, Ashley. I was just thinking of you a little bit ago. Well, after the live. And thank you for gifting a membership, Mary Beth. I don't know who got it, but welcome on in. I think I skipped over people, but welcome in. If I missed you, I'm sorry. Hey, Sunday Doodles. I think I got you, Glowbug. Hey, Glowbug. I think I got everybody. Everybody's in the chat just chit-chatting. Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Reba. These animals, they were all on this bed today. It was adorable. The cat was on it. Then the cat and the dog, they don't even get along. They don't even talk to each other. They usually stay away from each other. They were both on it. And then my brown dog was just on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. I thought at first it was going to be too poofy, but no. No. Oh, someone was rescued from Big Lots? I missed something. Actually, you know what? Before we start, let's just see if there's any updates. Nope, there's not. Okay. Just I was looking up Emma Baum from last night. We were going over that case last night. So I just wanted to check because I've been checking all day, but you never know. The one time you don't check is when something happened. So, thank you, Mary Beth, for saying that, because I never wear dark eyeshadow. And I was like, this is way too dark, but it was on and I was like, we're going with it. So thank you. I appreciate that so much. More than you know. Hey, sweet Melissa. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started with tonight's live. Actually, I want to start here. So I don't know why I have this one up, but we'll switch real quick. All right. So I'm going to put both of the ladies up here. But we're only going to really be talking about Jillian Kelley tonight, because that's whose autopsy's been released. Veronica's hasn't. And to me, that raises questions. Like, maybe they needed to do further testing. Maybe there was something that made it more complicated, more complex. I don't know. But Jillian Kelley is 39 and Veronica Butler was 27 when they disappeared in late March. They were taking a trip to Hugoton, Kansas, to pick up Veronica Butler's 2 children. They were going to go to a birthday party. Their abandoned car was found. And you could tell that there was signs of a struggle near the car. There was red stuff on the ground that had been like covered up with like some sort of dirt or like kitty litter, things of that nature. There was a magazine left in Jillian's purse, but there was no GUN in sight, things like that. So on April 14th, nearly 2 weeks after they were missing, investigators discovered their bodies sealed inside of a freezer, like a deep freeze, on someone's property that was being leased. And that was Tad Collum, one of the suspects that's now in custody. So he was leasing the field off of a guy named Stephen Beasley. And he asked Stephen, like, one day, hey, can I, bury some stuff on the property, like dig a hole and bury some stuff down in there? And he was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Didn't think that he was burying apparently 2 people. Even after he comes back to him and he says, hey, if the cops come asking you if I, buried somebody on the lot land, tell them I didn't do anything, because, and he's like, my skid steer is not going to look good here. It was just like, this guy should have called the police. But Joseph Scott Morgan is going to explain it all a little bit better to us. And he's going to give us details into Jillian's autopsy. And I'm going to as well. I'm going to go over it with you guys. He will be better with the wording. If I don't know the words, we're going to just do the speech thing. It'll tell me how to say it. So, but we're not sure why Veronica's hasn't come out yet. I still think that's a little odd, because this one's been out for a couple weeks now. So I just was waiting to kind of bring it out. I had it and I was just waiting to, like, I don't know. Something about this autopsy in this case, I was like, I just wanted the families to be able to, like, kind of see it for themselves and, like, read it. And I wanted to wait on, Veronica's, but hers isn't out yet. So we will watch this. Here, I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to show you. It's Banfield. So Banfield had Joseph Scott Morgan on her show. Let me see when this was. This was 10 days ago. So see, I've had this for a while. But yeah, let's go ahead and she'll go over, I'm sure. I didn't get to watch this beforehand. I watched the other one, but we'll see what she has to say, because I didn't even know this one came out, or I would have watched this when it came out 10 days ago. That would have been nice. And also, I'm still wondering about the tractor, the trailer that they were saying that they, like, carted them, like, back in. I still haven't seen that on paper, I don't think. And I've read through all 5 arrest affidavits.
And now I want to welcome back to the program Joseph Scott Morgan, certified death investigator, distinguished scholar at Jacksonville State University, and the best person I can think of to walk me through this. I pick up a report like this and I read through it, and I usually it's very clinical, but this one wasn't, Joe. Like, this one, I felt like I was out there on that dusty road in the Panhandle, and I felt like I could almost see it happening just by the way the injuries were coming in at Jillian. So can you walk me through how you saw it and what you envisioned playing out based on these injuries?
Yeah, this is a fantastic example of the dead telling their own tale. I think one of the things that really strikes me here, Ash, is they keep talking about the soiled clothing. And one of the things that we think about relative to soiled clothing is that the surfaces of the clothing have to be in contact with something in order to be soiled. So, what I mean by that is that when you particularly talk about Jillian's body here, when you think about her remains, she would be face down in a prone position so that someone could access her in order to traumatize her in the way that she was traumatized. She's got extensive injuries to the back of her neck, to her shoulders, which you've talked about, and even to her face. But how did they get her to that position? How was she placed there? How did she get there? When she was removed, perhaps, from the vehicle, and this is merely me speculating, we have this evidence of these injuries to her hands, which both have been ruled as incised wounds, consistent with defensive wounds. So if we think about a knife, where somebody is doing this action or presenting with it, the individual would reach up and grab the blade and it would be drugged through their hand. And this would incise the surface. And this isn't superficial. This is not a paper cut. We're talking about it goes down to the tendon and the
Yeah, I was looking into that earlier because I didn't know. I wanted to know the difference.
bone and through the musculature prior to that. It would have been very painful. And so my thought is, was she attempting to fight back at this moment in
Absolutely.
time when she realized what was going on? And then one of two things happened, in my estimation. She was either marched out to the gravesite at that point in time, or when they fell upon her, this kind of an old term about being attacked, fell upon her once she had been cut like this, they had to stun her. That's where you get these marks for the stun gun on the back of the neck.
Can I ask you about that? Can I ask you, because as I
Wow.
was reading this, they said the decomposition was so much so that it was hard to tell if it was stun gun marks or if it was like, liver that had developed all over the body. But they assumed because of the pattern that it was stun gun marks. But it looked to be somewhere between.
Well, and they had bought some stun guns, 5 of them. Everybody had one. You get one, just like Oprah right there too.
Between 6 and 8 stun gun marks. I mean,
hey, Groovy Nikki.
Did I read wrong? Because that to me sounds like
torture. You're absolutely on target. And if people have never seen a stun gun, it has posts on it, these stainless steel posts. And when they contact the skin, it sends a current through the body. And again, you kind of freeze into this position. There's nothing you can do to defend yourself. And when you get this many, Ash, you get this many of these marks on the body, that borders on the area. It doesn't border. It actually crosses over into the area of torture at this point in time, where she's getting popped over and over and over and over again like this until they get her to submit. And keep in mind, these injuries that she has on her back, and right you were when you said that they don't extend very much further south of her neck. This is a very concentrated area like this. That means that somebody's physically on top of her, hammering away with this knife. Got to the point where if people would just touch the back of their neck, right at the base of your skull, that blade entered her skull right there and clipped the brain stem where it controls our autonomic nervous system. So she couldn't have been able to breathe. Her heart would have stopped functioning.
Or move, they said. And God, I hope it was fast.
Me too.
Not fast enough. It will never have been fast enough. So, Joe, I'm going to call you back when they release Veronica Butler's, because my fear is that this is Jillian Kelley. She wasn't even the intended target. There's no animosity to her necessarily, but the target, Grandma Tiffany, if she's the killer, hated this former partner, daughter-in-law. And I am so upset at what the possibilities are for the way she died.
I think Jillian was trying to protect Miss Butler is what I think happened.
Oh.
Wow. Okay. I hadn't thought of that.
Ferociously.
I thought maybe she watched it happen and knew what was coming and fought like hell. Either could be true, but I thank you for your
Mhm.
thank you for reading through it. And
Well, that's what she was there to do, kind of, protect the kids, watch over everybody. Yeah, child custody, yeah. Ringa, they tried to unalive her twice before. They were going to do it with an anvil. Like, I mean, when I say it, I'm like, are you kidding? Can you imagine somebody on the back of a flatbed pickup? Because that's what they borrowed. Or they didn't borrow. They borrowed the truck and then they had the flatbed, or vice versa, from the uncle Cor and Cole Twombly. But could you imagine? An anvil has got away over 100 pounds easily, right? And they're just going to be riding on the back of the flatbed, and then they're going to throw it into the vehicle, and the vehicle is not going to stop at any point seeing somebody holding an anvil or get out of the way. Like, they weren't the smartest criminals in the world. Also, they tried to get her to come out of her house one night, Veronica. They tried to get Veronica to come out, and there was 5 of them. All 5 that ended up unaliving her were there, and she was smart and she didn't go out. She's like, I ain't playing that game with you. So it was like she was doing all the things, but it was like, but like, yeah, I mean, right? Can you see that though? Like in Ashley Higgins, can you see that with an anvil? Them just hold. I don't even think they'd be able to pick it up. But that's just me. But Jillian Kelley. Okay, so Veronica, Paul killed Veronica, and Tad is the one that killed Jillian. I think I got that mixed up earlier whenever I said it, but and that was in the court documents. So we will go through the autopsy report for Jillian Dolores Kelley, and it means is by assault with a knife. It's sad. I mean, she was 1984. Wow, a year older than me. So multiple forced trauma with a total of 16 sharp forced injuries as follows. Sharp force injuries to the head and neck. 1 cluster of 9 sharp forced injuries, 7 stab wounds, and 2 incised wounds to the posterior head and posterior neck, with defects to the posterior scalp and neck skin, soft tissue and muscle, tongue base, left internal jugular vein, posterior skull and cervical spine and spinal cord, with multi-fractured cervical vertebrae and multiple spinal cord injuries, including a possible complete transection of the upper cervical spinal cord at its junction with the brainstem. Wow. I wonder, like, which ones, like, I mean, I hope that the injuries that, like, the brainstem, that sounds like that'd put you out. Like, that would, you know what I mean? I don't know. I hope that it was fast, like they said. So then there's 1 stab wound to the right lateral cheek with defects to the underlying muscle and soft tissue, right zygomatic arch, right basal temporal skull, and brain, right temporal lobe. Isn't your zygomatic arch like right here? I think that's what that is, isn't it? Incised wounds to the left temple with defects to the left temporal skin, soft tissue, muscles, and skull. Incised wound to the left lateral jaw with defects in the skin and subcutaneous adipose tissue. Sharp force injury to the left shoulder. I'll try to like blow this up a little bit. That's a little better for me. I'm like, why am I doing that to myself? This is a lot. And these are just like the injuries that they're listing us, and then they're going to list some more stuff too. Incised wound to the left temple with defects to the left temporal skin. I read that one, I think, yeah. 1 incised wound to the left lateral jaw. So like down here with defects to the skin, sharp forced injuries to the left shoulder, superficial incised wounds to the top of the left shoulder with defects to the skin, stab wound to the posterior left shoulder with defects to the underlying muscle and soft tissue, sharp forced injuries in the bilateral hands, defensive type incised wounds to the left index finger with defects to the underlying muscle, tendons, bone, and proximal interferal angular joint. Angular. I don't know how to say that one. Okay. We'll move on. Defensive type incised wounds to the base of the right thumb with defects to the underlying muscles, tendons, bones. Wow. It sounds to me like maybe like they were like doing this and she's trying to like grab at it. I mean, that would be one of your first things to do. Or if you're putting your hands up, but I don't know if it would get it like that. I think it sounds like she was like trying to grab for it. Cause of death, multiple sharp force trauma. Manner of death is homicide. Case summary. In my opinion, based on the circumstances surrounding death and the findings at autopsy, Jillian Kelley died as a result of multiple sharp force trauma consisting of 9 stab wounds and 7 incised wounds. 16 total sharp injuries. 2 of the incised wounds were consistent with Miss Kelley having attempted to defend herself with incised wounds to her left index finger and right thumb. Although possible stun gun marks were observed on the back of her neck and posterior left shoulder, the decomposed state of her body limited definitive growths and microscopic confirmation. Well, she was piled on either under or on top of another person. I'm sure a lot of the evidence could be compromised. After having been fatally attacked, Jillian Kelley was then deliberately concealed inside a sealed freezer along with the body of Veronica Butler. The freezer was buried 4.5 to 8 feet below ground and covered with large concrete slab. Underneath the freezer were additionally buried clothing, a stun gun, a roll of tape, and a knife, all of which were collected on scene evidence by the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. Given the nature of Miss Kelley's injuries, including a devastating upper cervical spine cord injury, it is my opinion that her death was very rapid, as she would have likely not only lost her ability to move her body below her head, but also her ability to breathe on her own. In my opinion, therefore, that she was most likely deceased before she was placed inside the freezer. The manner of death is homicide. It doesn't sound like it was very quick, though. Not being able to breathe. That sounds terrible. Circumstances of death. According to investigator and forensic anthropology reports, the decedent Jillian Kelley was 39-year-old female who had been reported missing along with Veronica Butler since March 30th, 2024. Both women were found on April 14th, 2024 within a large sealed freezer, 54 long by 27 wide by 35 high. I kind of want to know how long that is. I'm about to go get... Is that like a normal size? I just kind of wonder how big that would be. 54 inches is pretty... What size my desk, maybe? Let's see. It says it was buried 4.5 to 8 feet below ground in an area that recently disturbed soil consistent with a pit and associated ramp located in Royal Pasture in Texas County, Oklahoma. The freezer was tilted backward somewhat on its posterior inferior edge and kept sealed with yellow ratchet straps that Tiffany let her grandkids just walk around the school or walk around the store carrying around before she could buy them. Wow. No longer adherent gray tape was additionally noted near the freezer door handle. A large slab of heavy concrete, 92 by 60 by 8, was lying on top of the interior aspect of the freezer, laying it at an angle and particularly supported by the ground. Underneath the freezer were found clothing and other evidentiary items, including a stun gun, a roll of tape, and a sheathed knife, all collected by OSBI. I thought the knife wasn't sheathed. Maybe there was one that was sheathed, one that wasn't. The freezer was briefly opened on scene to confirm the presence of 2 decedents and packaged with proper chain of custody evidence for transport to the Oklahoma City office of the chief medical examiner. There, I forgot I could put the chat there. That's so much better. And thank you guys all for being here. I appreciate it. I know that this story needs to be told. It needs to be out there. So let's see. Okay, so we saw the concrete, or we read the concrete. It was laying at an angle and particularly supported by the ground. Underneath the freezer was the clothes and other evidentiary items, including the stun gun, the roll of tape, the sheath knife. The freezer was briefly opened on scene to confirm, the presence of 2 decedents and packaged with proper chain of custody evidence for transport to the Oklahoma City office of the chief medical examiner on 4/15/2024. Identification, fingerprints, skin gloves, left hand, and blood samples on filter paper are obtained. The body is identified through circumstantial means and visual tattoo photographic comparison by Dr. Ciela Cobb. The body is identified through circumstantial means. What's circumstantial means? I wonder. And a visual tattoo. I mean, I'm just glad that her husband didn't have to go in there and physically have to look at the body, or her children, if they didn't need to, because she did have tattoos. So postmortem examination. So the postmortem examination of Jillian Kelley is performed by Dr. Celia Cobb at the office of the chief medical examiner, Central Division, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, on 4/5 through 4/18. With the autopsy exam itself commencing at 1300 hours on 4/17/2024. Assisting in the examination are OCME medical legal investigators Jody Dillon and Ashley Welch, as well as autopsy technician Jason Parks. Clothing and personal effects. The body is received inside a sealed freezer, transported inside a sealed covered trailer belonging to the Guyman Fire Department. Upon opening the trailer, the freezer is noted to be wrapped in a clean red tarp and secured within the trailer by new yellow ratchet straps and lumber. The outer straps and red tarp are removed to reveal the freezer wrapped up from transportation by the inner clean blue tarp secured by 2 additional new yellow ratchet straps and duct tape. So they're just putting new stuff, I guess, on there to keep it, because they were transporting it. I want to keep all the evidence in one spot. And the duct tape was dated 4/14 and initialed by the forensic anthropologist Sarah Getz. So 2 OCME toe tags labeled with the case numbers, along with undisturbed OCME orange bag seal number 343984, are present on the ratchet strap hooks. After transportation from the trailer into the OCME autopsy lab, the tarp, straps, and duct tape are removed to reveal a partially dented, partially dirt-covered older model white freezer. Older model white freezer. Okay. Thank you, Mary Beth. I'm about to allow gifts. The gifts on my own channel. Wouldn't that be funny? I don't have my gifts turned on. So, okay. I'll make sure we read it all. After transportation from the trailer to the OCME autopsy lab, the tarp, straps, and duct tape are removed to reveal a partially dented, partially dirt-covered older model white freezer, 54 inches long by 27 wide, 35 high. Secured with a new yellow ratchet strap placed for transportation, 4 well-worn, dirt-covered, partially adherent strips of apparent old gray duct tape are present on the front aspect of the lid where the freezer door seal is partially detached. Patches and streaks of dried red-brown fluid are noted on the front and the back of the freezer. You can only imagine what that is. Upon opening the freezer lid, the body of Veronica Butler, the female decedent from related OCME case, is noted to be lying on top of the decedent. Okay, so now we know. It was Jillian and then Veronica on top. Jillian Kelley's body is then observed to be lying on her right posterolateral side of the bottom of the freezer and her arms tucked in front of her chest, her hips flexed forward and her knees bent. Okay, I'm going to read this to myself for a minute so I could see what visually, like. Okay. So like if you were like just on your knees and like sitting straight up and then our arms were in front of her. That's what it seems like. Like kind of like this and then her legs. She was observed to be wearing soiled blue jeans, denim capri pants, a soiled blue stained blue and white plaid long sleeve unbuttoned flannel shirt with multiple defects, and soiled white sneakers and ankle socks. Of note, both bodies are noted to be in early to moderate stage. I don't know this word. Hold on. It won't let me. Let's see. Purification. See, productive. I don't even know what that word is, but productive decomposition. What's product? I don't know. Did you guys know what that means? Let's see. No, I can't even find the word. Let's look it up. Oh, it didn't look it up. It looked up first. I'm sure our dude will tell us, what's his name? Joseph Scott Morgan, but we'll see what it says. It just says the process of decay or rotting in a body or other organic matter. Meaning like you can smell it as you go by. The interior walls and floors of the freezer are noted to be partially covered in corpus dirt and hay and mixed with blood and decomposition fluid. A pair of soiled shoes is additionally present on the freezer floor along with a soiled Apple Watch and 2 soiled gloves, 1 leather, 1 cloth. These separate items at the bottom of the freezer are not removed from the freezer and are submitted along with the freezer to OSBI. After removal of the decedent from the freezer, she is further noted to be clad in a soiled blood-stained red t-shirt with multiple defects, a soiled tan bra, and soiled black underwear with a soiled panty liner in place. A white earpod case with earpod enclosed is additionally found within the front left pocket of the decedent's flannel shirt. She had one in. Additional personal effects present on her body include a metal earring stud with clear stone within the right earlobe, a metal nose ring stud with clear stone within the right nostril, a medium chain necklace around the neck with small clear stone pendant, a metal wedding band, an engagement ring with clear stone on the left fourth finger, and 4 metal rings on the right fourth finger, each with separate names inscribed. Those are probably for her children. Oh my goodness. Those rings were probably for her kids. That's sad. That's sad. I hope they got that stuff back. I mean, I know they did, but you know, I hope they've gotten it back by now anyway. Collection, they did blood samples on filtered paper, clothing, personal effects, scalp and pubic hair samples, oral, vaginal, and rectal swabs. Skin gloves of the bilateral hands and left hands are collected and introduced as evidence. The left hand and skin gloves are analyzed by the OSBI and are returned prior to release of the body. The freezer containing a pair of shoes, an Apple Watch, and the 2 gloves inside are submitted separately to the OSBI as soon as the bodies are removed from the freezer. They wanted them, you know, they wanted the extra stuff that was in there. So external examination, she's 70 inches, 173. Jillian is? Maybe they're going to say, yeah, this is Jillian. Okay. See the evidence of injury section below for a description of the external injuries. The nude body is that of a well-developed, well-nourished female appearing consistent with the reported age of 39 years. The body is refrigerated and in early to moderate stages of decomposition, characterized by extensive skin slipping, hair sloughing, bloating, trigger warning, red, brown to green, black skin discoloration, diffuse subcutaneous crepitations, partial liquefaction of subcutaneous adipose tissue, and a foul odor. Copious dirt and hay and mixed with decomposition fluid covers the majority of the exposed bodily surfaces, including the medium-length dark blonde scalp hair, which is largely detached in a few matted clumps. Of note, this dirt and debris is most concentrated over the head and neck and is additionally admixed with blood within the region. No maggot or other insect activity is present. So I guess they really had that thing sealed, I would assume. Rigor mortis is past, while livor mortis is right, posterolateral, and fixed. The intact eyes have interdeterminately colored irids and pupil size given the state of decomposition. No definitive conjunctive or facial, I don't know that word, sorry. Let's see what it is. We'll have it say it to me.
Petechiae.
Oh, petechiae. I didn't know that was how that was spelled. So no facial petechiae are observed. Dirt mixed with decomposition fluid and blood is present within the external nares, mouth, and ear canals. Within the mouth, there is natural detention in good condition. The lips are intact. The torso and extremities are all normally formed and symmetric. The pelvis and genitalia region are intact. The external genitalia are those of an adult female. The epidermal layer of skin on the bilateral hands are nearly completely degloved, along with most of the fingernails. A single tattoo of a butterfly is present on the right medial arm, just above her elbow. No conspicuous scars are identified. I wonder where the tattoo was originally. Because they're saying, like, I wonder if there were, slippage, or if that's where it was. Evidence of injury. So this just gives us what we went over. The body bears. So if you're just now coming and joining us, it kind of gives us a little bit of what we just read. The body bears a total of 16 sharp forced injuries, including 9 stab wounds to the posterior head, posterior neck, upper right cheek, and posterior left shoulder. 5 incised wounds to the posterior head, posterior neck, left temple, left lateral jaw, and superior left shoulder, and 2 defensive type incised wounds to the left index finger and right thumb. The injuries are assigned numbers in the order they are examined and are not meant to indicate the sequence of injury. The sharp force wounds are classified as a stab wound if they are deeper than they are long in the skin surface, and the incised wounds if they are longer on the skin surface than they are deep. The term angles is used to describe the ends of the sharp force wounds on the skin surface, and the term margins is used to describe the edges of the sharp force wounds on the skin surface. Skin decomposition changes limit some interpretation of the sharp forced injury angle and margin classifications, blunt versus sharp, angle versus smooth, serrated margins respectively. If not specifically provided, the angles and margins are otherwise intermediate. All wound track directions provided are based on the body being referenced to the standard anatomically position, that is, the body standing upright and facing forward with the arms hanging down on either side and the palms facing forward. So, there was 9 sharp forced wounds to the posterior head and neck, wounds 1 through 9. There is a cluster of 9 sharp forced injuries to the base of the posterior head and posterior neck, labeled 1 through 9 in exam photos. Some of these wounds can be separated into definitive track with separate injuries. However, given their proximity, a few have overlapping tracks and with shared injuries to the underlying neck, soft tissue, muscles, vertebrae, and spinal cord, and fractures and knife marks noted on cervical vertebrae 1 through 5. All 9 wound tracks have a general back to front direction, and some of the more complex and or subcutaneously connected wounds having multiple combined trajectories that makes definitively delineating the other plane directions difficult. The 9 wounds are further characterized as follows. This like writing on here, I don't know why it's like looks like a typewriter or something. Like, see how like the plane, like where's this plane? Like it's like not spaced properly. I don't know. That's what's like getting my eyes tonight. Wound number 1, horizontal incised wound to posterior lower neck or lower head. Center of wound located 10 centimeters, measure 7 centimeters long and 3 centimeters deep, striking bone. Both margins and at least 1 sharp angle favored. Somewhat complex wound with a sharp angled skin flap noted on central aspect of inferior margin, consistent with the knife blade having likely been partially pulled out and reinserted into the same wound track. Injuries to the posterior lower optical scalp, muscle, soft tissue, and skull with associated hemorrhage. 3 separate knife markings present on the lower, I think this is occipital skull, with chipped bone noted, penetrates through the outer surface layer of the bone only, not its full thickness. Direction is back to front and slightly downward. Now, I wonder if they had a certain way that they were supposed to be doing this. Do you know what I mean? I wonder if Miss Tiffany gave them direct orders on where to cause the injuries. Because these are like pretty big. These are pretty big injuries, like deep. I'll just give you like a summary of each one. So wounds 1 or wounds 2, okay, so wound 2. This one is located 13 centimeters below the top of the head. It measures 8 centimeters by 3 by 8. It does strike bone. It's a complex wound. It went through the muscles, the skin, the soft tissue, all the way to the spinal cord. The third one is tangible stab wound to the left upper posterior neck. Struck bone. Lateral angle, more superior. Medial angle, more inferior. Injuries to the left posterior upper neck, skin, muscle, soft tissue, and vertebrae. Hemorrhaging. Direction is back to front and slightly downward. See, they're all like that. Wound number 4, stab wound to the left upper posterior neck. Wound number 5, stab wound to the left upper posterior neck. A lot of left. Complex gapping, wound number 6, complex gapping stab wound to the posterior mid neck. And these are all multiple regions of bone. Oh, multiple regions of bone striking. Number 7, horizontal, slightly gaping, diamond-shaped inside wound. And that was in mid-neck. And it says associated with hemorrhage. It doesn't say anything about hitting bone that one time. Wound number 8, gaping stab wound to posterior lower neck. Wound number 9, posterior lower neck. Note, given the close proximity and complexity of the aforementioned stab wounds to the lower posterior head and posterior neck, it is difficult to definitively separate which of the cervical spinal injuries involving cervical vertebrae 2 through 5 are caused by each stab wound. Additionally, the state of the decomposition causing liquefaction of the brain and spinal cord limits the assessment of the extent of the cervical spinal cord injuries. The injuries to the cervical spine and spinal cord are therefore best classified together as follow. Second cervical vertebrae, third cervical vertebrae, fourth cervical vertebrae, fifth cervical vertebrae. Wow. 1 stab wound to the right upper lateral cheek. That's wound number 14. Wonder if she like turned around too fast, or I don't know. I don't. It's just weird. Incised wound to the left temple. Incised wound to the left lateral jaw. Like all of her injuries are to the left. Left shoulder wound. Another left shoulder wound. A defensive type. Incised wound to the left index finger. Right thumb. Defensive wound. And then additional findings, there are 2 clustered groups of 3 or 4. Circular to avoid dark red brown markings located in the lower posterior neck and the left posterior shoulder. The markings are located 1.5 to 2 centimeters from each other, each cluster group. Although there are similar discolored markings associated with the decomposition changes located all over the body, these markings appear to be haphazard and irregular rather than a pattern. I thought they were going to say maybe that was something else. I don't think there's any pictures on here. Oh, this is the internal injuries. Okay. So, the neck, all neck structures are normally formed and present. Seeing if there's anything. Cardiovascular system, heart weight, 201 grams. Yeah, she was healthy weight, respiratory system. And then central nervous system, brain weight. No, some of the stuff is discolored, they're saying. Oh, that's so sad. Toxicology, post-mortem specimens are submitted to toxicology for storage. No toxicological and analysis ordered. Okay. Representative tissue sections are stored. I guess I thought they always did a toxicology report. full body x-ray and computer. Okay, tomography scans. Just seeing if there's anything else. And the material was submitted blood, urine, liver, brain. Oh, hold status 5 years. It says no toxicology analysis requested. That's so weird to me. I thought that everybody got something like, I mean, you know, I always just thought you always just got something done. Okay. I knew this would be a little bit of a longer live. So we will go over to body bags. I will put some pictures up. I didn't download any yet. I forgot to download them before the live. But I'll see if I could download some pictures that we have something to look at while we're watching this. But he's going to go over everything I just read in way better detail than I could. But he'll be able to, you know, he's going to give us like exactly what happened to, you know, these women. Now, he won't know a whole lot about Veronica Butler because, of course, like I said earlier, her autopsy report still hasn't been released. But he does know his stuff, and he's going to give us a lot more info on Jillian.
Body bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Have you ever gotten a phone call in the middle of the night and not work related, but you have somebody that at least counts you as a friend, and they say, hey, can you help me out with something? Unfortunately, I've had that call that has come to me from jails every now and then with friends that made really bad decisions, primarily involving alcohol. However, today on Body Bags, we're going to talk about a case, actually cases, that so caught the attention of America, and not merely because it was one lady helping out another, but the absolute gruesome nature of their murders was something that most of the people around the United States could not begin to comprehend. This is a follow-up to an earlier episode of Body Bags, I think from back in April of 24. But today we have more information. Today we have the autopsy report of Jillian Dolores Kelley. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, I know you. I know you better than you might think. I know that if you've got a friend and they called you up to say, can you help me with something? You're the dude that would hop in your shoes, grab your keys, and head out to your car and go do this. How much more so if maybe it was where you're put in almost a custodial position with people that have, kind of a fragile existence. Perhaps they're really down and out, and the court says, we trust you to take care of this person. I know that you would do that. I even think that maybe you have done that.
Joe, I have been the person that gets the call in the middle of the night, and I don't mind it. It's actually an honor and a privilege to be that person. It is inconvenient. You do lose sleep, but it is an honor to be there for somebody if they feel like they got nowhere else to turn, because you earn the right to share the truth with them then. But I've had the opportunity to be every aspect of the case we're dealing with today with Jillian Kelley's autopsy. I'm going to tell you what, this woman is a saint, Joe. Jillian Kelley is married to her pastor husband. They got married in 2002. They have 4 children. Jillian Kelley works with children in the church. She's the church secretary. I mean, just a wonderful woman. Veronica Butler has supervised visitation with her children. Veronica Butler and Wrangler Rickman have 2 children. Tiffany Adams is Wrangler Rickman's mom. That makes her the paternal grandparents to Veronica Butler's children. Veronica Butler had trouble in her life in the past, enough so that she lost custody. of her children to Tiffany Adams. But now she's righted her life. She's in church. She's engaged. She's got a job. She went back to school. Her life is on track, man. Veronica Butler's doing good. So good, in fact, she's going back to court and they're going to award her custody of her children. She's getting her children back. She's excited, but she's still at this moment has custody she has supervised visitation with her children every Saturday. And Tiffany Adams was not about to give up custody of those children to Veronica Butler. She didn't care if that's her mom. She wanted the children, and that was it. So Tiffany Adams calls the woman who regularly supervises visitation for Veronica Butler and cancels it. Tiffany Adams tells her, "We aren't going to need you this time. I'll call you when we need you again." Then she calls Veronica Butler and says, "Hey, Veronica, the court liaison, the supervisor of visitation just canceled. I don't know what we'll do."
Mm-hmm. Hear that? She had this whole setup to where she didn't want even the person that were to go and be there to oversee the custody, the exchange. It's crazy to me that Tiffany was like, "No, I told my lady she couldn't make it. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I guess your person's going to have to come now," because she didn't want to unalive the person that she became friends with.
And Butler says, "That's
in my
okay.
opinion.
I've got somebody." She goes to Jillian Kelley at church. Jillian says, "Sure, I'll go." They're not buddies or pals, but they're friendly. And Jillian says, "Sure, I'll go with you." So Veronica Butler gets Jillian Kelley, and here they go. They are going to meet to get the children on March 30th. That is what they're going to do. It's arranged for them to meet at this, it's a closed gas station now, but that's where they were going to meet to exchange the children. Veronica Butler would pick them up there, and she and Jillian would then take Kendall and the other child and go to the birthday party that was planned for Kendall. Well, they never showed up at the birthday party, and the family starts calling, "Hey, Veronica and Jillian never showed up with the kids. What's going on?" That's when we first got this story. These two Kansas moms going to pick up the kids never arrived with them. What happened?
I've covered so many cases and worked so many cases over my career where people did not realize that moment in time, when they walked out of the door, they looked into the eyes of their spouse or to their precious babies, that was going to be the last time they ever saw them. And how much more so, not seeing the future, not knowing that your life is going to end literally at the hands of a mob on a dirty, dusty road in the panhandle of Oklahoma.
Cocktail maker or cocktail?
Yourself.com/
lights from Lowe's delivered same because less.
This killer thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. Better than he knows himself.
Open a body bag. Let's just say.
Original series, only on Prime Video. Watch now.
I've borne witness to some, let's just say, odd and disturbing things in the autopsy suite. And you never, and I mean this with everything that's in me, you never know what's going to happen when you open a body bag, period. You really don't. You don't know what has been brought in from the field, because many times, in my case, I'd work at night as an investigator. I'd be the autopsy assistant during the day. And it might not be my case. I might have read over a thumbnail description, but Dave, when you come into an autopsy room and there has been a gigantic deep freezer that has been brought from a scene that still has straps on it, you suspect as an investigator at the scene that what you're going to have in there is going to be very bad. But when you open that door and you look inside of there are things in my brain right now that I'm recalling as I'm talking right now. I can still see those images. I can still get hit. And even after all these years, I can still get hit in the face with that smell that emanates from the sealed area, which in effect is a casket for not just one, but for 2 women, Dave. It's a monumental
sad.
undertaking. And I think people many times are shocked that we don't open things at scenes and remove the items. If you have that body or bodies contained, it's best to keep them contained. Okay. And then you bring them to a location that is well lighted. You've got primo photography. You document the steps of opening up this thing. And let me tell you one more thing that would have been done prior to them ever undoing these large yellow straps that are on the outside. This freezer would have been thoroughly externally printed, dusted for prints, looking for any kind of latent contact prints. It's a sight to behold, because you never know what's going to be contained inside of any box like this. I've had coffins. I have had not a freezer. I've had a refrigerator with the shells removed. I've had blocks of concrete that have contained human remains where you have to chisel it away. I've had cars where I've had multiple people killed in it. And I used to think, being in charge, you're literally, if you're the ME investigator, you're in charge of the bodies. And we all came to a consensus at the scene that it would be better not to remove the bodies from the car, but have them flat bedded to the state crime lab, and you cover it with a tarp. And, like, you have this horrible thought in your brain that you're literally transporting bodies. You're in, and I remember in particularly I-85 in Atlanta, removing a car to a local lot that had 5 people inside of it, and all we had it covered with was a blue crash tarp on the back of a flatbed. And, as an investigator, you're thinking your worst nightmare is that the tarp is going to fly off, and here you're going to have bodies. If anybody's ever driven through the hellscape that is the highway system in Atlanta, you can get caught up in traffic. They don't move out of the way for a wrecker. They don't move out of the way for cops most of the time.
Wow.
But how much more so than a wrecker? And the thing comes off. Can you imagine? You've got kids, and you kind of look, and it's even to this day when I see things going down the road that are strapped down on the back of a car like a freezer or something, I'm always thinking, I wonder if that's empty. I wonder if it's empty. And I've had a few times in my life since being on the streets where I've seen police escorting flatbed trucks, and they've got a tarp over them, and I know what's under the tarp. The civilians don't around you, but right. you want to maintain that pristine nature. I
was going to ask you, when they got there in this particular case, investigators determined where Tad Cullum, that is the boyfriend of Tiffany Adams, had dug the hole and everything ahead of time. And they found the bodies at the scene. They were 10 feet down. Okay. A 10 feet deep hole had been dug. The freezer was placed some items were thrown in, a phone and some other items of evidence were thrown into the hole. Then the freezer was dumped in there. Then cement block and everything else was then thrown into the hole, and then dirt and everything else mashed down. When they got it dug up, you said that they're not going to take anything out right then, but they still have to identify what is in the freezer, even though they believe it to be Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelley. But they're not going to do a big exam out there.
No.
What are they going to do?
They're not. No. And at the scene, just full disclosure here, they did briefly open it at the scene. So they cracked the side of it. And there had been tape that was adherent on the outside. It's, when this thing is brought to.
As soon as you crack that tape, you're going to know exactly what's in that. Anybody that's dealt with a dead body before, they're going to know that that's what's in that container. You know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure there's a difference between human and animal.
To the ME, even in the report section of the autopsy report. When I say report section, it's actually the medical legal investigation subheading in the report. They allude to the fact the tape was no longer there. So that leads me to believe it had been taped shut at some point in time. Now they had to strap this thing down, but yeah, so they would have lifted this thing at the scene, peeked over the edge into the cooler or the freezer
I ain't got the
to
fifth one
assess
up
what
there,
was
but
in there, because you don't necessarily know. You have your suspicions. Okay.
Right.
And here's another thing. And I know this sounds really far afield, but if this thing was booby trapped in some way, I mean, you're talking about a double homicide. Okay. It's not beyond the pale to think that someone that was willing to commit this kind of homicide would, perhaps put other people at risk. All right. You don't know. You never know what you're going to get, when you open any door,
That
whether
would
it's at a
never
scene.
have
Yeah,
occurred to me.
it's terrifying. And I've had friends that have gone on to
Oh.
booby trap scenes where people have committed suicide and they're booby trapped with weapons. I had one friend that's almost shot in the chest with a .308 deer rifle because he opened a closet and it had a trigger on it, a line trigger tension thing.
Oh my
Oh,
word!
geez.
No.
And he
Joseph?
happened to be, the round actually passed in front of him. So my
Wow.
paranoia, I guess, is that the right term, is not unwarranted. I
Yeah.
look at all of these things as if, because I want to go home at the end of the day.
So you guys get the
I-
freezer back in, and you're afraid as you're getting ready to open it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's terrifying.
It-
and
I-
and you're,
I was terrified by what was inside, not
not
a bomb, but the bodies.
Listen, man, look, I don't put anything past anybody that'll commit a homicide,
right.
particularly of a stranger, and then a mother. If they're willing to eradicate them off the face of the planet, my life means nothing to them whatsoever. Okay. Or my colleagues that might be there. And that's just like one of the little boxes that you want to tick and check at that point in time and try to understand that. But once you get past that, you have to take due care, because Dave, this freezer, this deep freeze had been, it had the utility of a coffin, right? Actually a casket.
It was.
Yeah. And then I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just throwing this out there. All right. Let me give you the dimensions on this just so that you and our friends can appreciate it. So not only did they have this rather large freezer, okay, but you'd mentioned something just a second ago. There was a slab of concrete that was placed on top of it. Dave, let me give you the dimensions. Are you ready, brother?
Yep.
Okay. The dimensions of the slab of concrete are 92 inches. Keep in mind, 6 feet tall is 72 inches, okay? By 60 inches, okay? All right. That's length, width, and the depth of this thing, the thickness of it. Dude, this slab is 8 inches in thickness.
Holy moly.
Do you realize what kind of equipment you would have to have in place in order to move a slab like that? I mean, you could have, I don't know, maybe you could have a bunch of
Maybe a skid steer.
really robust, a bunch of robust country boys that could, dig their hands into it and drop it down. But nah, I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking this is something, first off, you have to acquire it. Where do you even find a slab of that size? That's bigger. That's actually bigger than a slab that you would find on top of a standard gravesite. If you go to
Huge.
to the cemetery, and you're
Yeah.
walking along and they've got the big slabs that are laid down on the ground. There's a headstone. That's bigger than that. This is something that you would only see probably in construction. All right. And that's one of the most striking things. When they would have gotten out to that scene, to the grave site, and begun to assess this thing. And remember, this is, give or take, hang on, I've got to review this real quick, because
2 weeks.
You're talking 2 weeks downrange.
Right.
We don't know what the weather was like. They went missing back in March. They're found in April.
Right.
I don't know. What I would be really interested in knowing is, first off, what type of tracks are around the gravesite? Because if you're talking about a front end loader or a skid steer, or
It was a skid steer.
or
That's
something
what he
like
used.
that, it's going to be very distinctive.
That's what I said.
It's not going to look like tire tracks, dude.
Right.
And you're talking
But that's what he used, skid steer. We looked at that picture for a long time.
about carrying a tremendous amount of weight. Not that those things aren't made for that, but if you you think about that and the pressure that's going to be applied directly on those tires, the supporting element of that vehicle, and pressing it down into the dirt. If you're carrying a heavy load, you're going to come away with really good impressions from that. And that's very specific to that piece of equipment. This isn't just like a truck, Papaw's truck driving down a country road. This is something that's very specific. And why would you have a skid steer out in the middle of a field like this?
Well, actually, it was the area that it was about 50 feet from the dam. And there was like a shed area out there that Tad had been working on. And he notified the owner of the property that he was leasing part of it from, that he was going to be doing some work out there, that he was going to be burying some cement. He had told him that then. This is 2 days before the bodies were, 2 days before Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelley went missing. He tells the guy that owns the place, the work he's doing. Then after they go missing, he tells the owner, yeah, I'm a suspect.
Yeah.
They're missing and you're a suspect? Really?
But don't tell him about that whole thing, that about me with the skid steer and, getting all the dirt, 8 foot of dirt. Don't talk about that.
And that's why this fell apart so quick, because,
dude, okay.
Well, we had freaking Tiffany going out here buying everything, acting like she was buying burner phones that were going to actually be a burner phone. I mean, we're in 2024, honey. It told them exactly where you were standing when you powered it on. Like, these people were not the smartest. That's why they got caught so fast.
Let's just say,
you're going to tell anybody you're a suspect?
Well, I'm thinking, let's go back before that, because, this is one of those moments where you say, does your mind work?
Right.
You're sitting there and you're thinking about this. So you're leasing, not purchasing, you're leasing property. Guess what happens to leases? Leases run out.
Yep.
The property owner, still retains this. So if he's going to go in, I don't know, and drop a crop of whatever it is they grow in Oklahoma, wheat or corn or whatever it is.
Wheat or corn.
Sudden, his plow gets hung up on the lip of this thing. In what universe do you think that this is not going to be discovered? My thought was, and this is so horrific, but I'm going to go ahead and say it because this is what we talk about on body bags. Did they have plans, perhaps, to passively render these bodies down inside of this thing, come back later when the heat was off, draw it up, or take out those remains and dispose of them in some other way? I toyed with that idea, because I can't make sense of it. Just the leasing element alone. But if you're using a skid steer like this, it's not going to take too long to facilitate a big hole in the ground, if you will. And that's certainly what happened. And again, Dave, as we mentioned earlier, what does this go to? Well, it goes to, I don't know, something called premeditation.
Yep. And that's the killer on all of this. It's the fact that this was planned out, thought out, and they thought this was the best they could come up with. By the way, the location of the bodies in the freezer, 8 miles from where the car was stopped. Okay. 8 miles from where they were abducted. That's how this was all planned out, Joe. Now, they've got the freezer out and you're now transporting it. It's taped, it's tarped, and everything else. It gets back to the lab. And other than a cursory, perfunctory look to see there are 2 bodies on the inside, the 2 bodies we're looking for, and shutting it, they don't know if there's anything else in there. They don't know if this freezer has other things, other people even. Yeah. They just know they saw 2 bodies that the women they're looking for. And so back at the lab, when you open it up, we know that they'd been in there for 2 weeks, at least, because we know when they went missing and we know when they found the freezer. So there you go. They were killed the day they were abducted, apparently, is what it appears based on the blood at the scene in the road, based on the blood in the vehicle, where the vehicle came to rest 1,000 feet from the road. You take 2 and 2. They were dead. And
the broken hammer, which is a nice touch, right?
Yeah. Chances are if they break a hammer beating you, you're not surviving that beating.
No, you're not.
But once they get them back to the crime lab, or where do they take these to do an autopsy with the state?
And I think we'll see the hammer marks on Veronica's autopsy report. I guess they're not releasing it for 6 months, it's saying online. I'm looking into it though.
Yeah, they're going to go, and it's dependent. Oklahoma does not have coroners. All right, and this is
really what do they have?
Yeah, they have, and it's a fine office. They actually have a state medical examiner. So the state is kind of regionalized. All right, and you've got the Central Division, the Eastern Division. I think the Eastern Division is based in Tulsa, and of course the Central Division's in Oklahoma City.
You know what I just remembered?
What's that, Bo?
You have told me how good they are in Oklahoma in the system they use.
Yeah.
I just remember, it just came to mind that you have bragged about how good they are before.
Well, I'm a big fan of medical examiner systems, particularly statewide, that are not administered by police or the law enforcement agency. If you have a state medical examiner that is administered primarily by the health department, it turns out better for everybody, because for us in my world, and we're not merely interested in homicides. We do, as a matter of fact, we handle more natural deaths. So that that feeds directly into the mission of public health and the state health department. And we work, they work with the police. They have investigators and all that, but their job is different. So in most places, I can't speak specifically, but I would imagine that they might have a separate decomp room, which many facilities I have been, and we kind of break it down like this, where you have a clean area and then a decomp area. And even the bodies are stored separately. You don't have decomp bodies most of the time in the main cooler with fresh dead. And you can do more in that environment. Anthropologists generally has a space in there so that they can do their exams, which are mind-blowing, that we can talk about another time. But you have that environment there that has to be controlled. And when you go into this thing, everybody that is in this room, Dave, they appreciate the fragility of everything that is contained, not just within the freezer, but also externally. So kind of the cast of characters you're going to have in there is probably going to be the lead investigator. You're going to have maybe a couple of medical legal death investigators and an autopsy assistant in there. The primary or the medical examiner, the forensic pathologist directing everything. And then there's a high probability you're going to have a crime scene tech there as well. And so what'll happen is that one of the ME investigators will take photographs for the medical examiner, but the crime scene investigator will also take photographs, but for their purposes, it's for their reference. Okay, so you've got two sets of photography many times with a case that's going on like this. Not always the time. Sometimes you'll have people that have this kind of intimate sharing, of the images back and forth. No, it's on you. You take the photographs today. But, the doctors, like cops, are not necessarily interested in taking pictures of organs or the detailed anatomy. And there's a specific practice called medical photography that you get really good at, because you have to understand anatomy. And I'm not slighting police photographers, but in our world, in the medical legal world, you need a specific skill set in order to appreciate what the physician is talking about. Like if he says or she says, please take a photograph of the right greater horn of the hyoid bone.
Wow.
The crime scene detective is not necessarily going to know what they're talking about.
I'm going to find that on Google.
Yeah. They're just not going to do it. Now, I've seen, forensic pathologists that will give almost a primal grunt and point. I used to work with one forensic pathologist in the past that would use his knife to point at everybody. He carried a huge butcher knife, and it was always covered in blood. And he had this kind of primal grunting thing that he would go, and he had a very interesting personality, to say the least. But that's how he would direct you. But if you have somebody that's familiar with human anatomy, and all of those anatomical points or landmarks that we're looking for, not just externally, but internally when the body is open. So that's kind of the cast of characters here. And you don't know what type of evidence is going to be recovered. And let's just say, because at this point, when you open up when you open up this freezer, you don't know what the cause of death is. You have no idea. That's why you're doing the autopsy. So when you open this up, you could find things like ballistic evidence in there, or if there is a projectile inside of the body. I've seen medical examiners do two things. I've seen them actually, in the case of a projectile, remove it, and they take a diamond tipped pin, and yes, that's what I said, and they go to the base of a projectile that's removed, and they will actually initial it on the bottom, and that indicates that I'm the one that removed it, and they'll include that in there. And then I've seen them take other bits of evidence, including ballistic evidence, and turn it over directly to a detective or to a crime scene technician that's present at the autopsy. It's a weird kind of orchestration that has to go on. And with this particular cases, this is dense material, Dave, scientifically. From a forensics perspective, this is about as complex as things can get, because you're introducing something into the environment that is not, it's an unknown relative to the container itself. How are you going to manage this? And how are you going to manage it so you don't screw it up? Because if you screw it up with really doing the big, bold opening of the thing, you can eradicate evidence.
Because you only get one shot at this. You can't
right.
go back and redo it.
You're absolutely no do-overs, no mulligans.
Yeah.
If you're a golfer, you don't get to do it over, because once it's gone, it's gone. If there is even a hair, keep in mind with any kind of freezer or refrigerator, there's a big kind of rubber, plastic, foam gasket, right?
Right.
Well, okay, so let's pretend that somebody has killed someone and they want to put them into this. We've already stated how deep this thing is. All right. How deep this freezer is. Well, you're leaning over the side. Guess what you're coming in contact with? Your clothing. You're coming in contact with this gasket that goes around there. Guess what you can pick up on that gasket? Well, any kind of fiber evidence, hair, anything you're shedding, skin, that could be the perpetrator, or at least the person that was in concert with the perpetrator that is placing that body down into that. So you have to even be careful in that area, because that freezer, first off, the freezer is unique. The brand, it's going to have a serial number. It's probably, and most of those things have got like you know what I'm talking about? It's got that kind of aluminum tag thing that's bolted.
Has all the specifics of what it is.
Yeah, and where it was manufactured even. And it probably, in those little coding numbers they have, I hope that somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but in those they probably had the batch that this thing came off the line with. It, you can look at that number and go back to the factory, Frigidaire or whoever it is, and say, hey, I've got this number. When did this thing come off the line? Where did it go to when it came off the line? Oh, it went to big box store A. You go to them and say, hey, I've got this. You received this batch. Do you know who bought this? Well, our records, sir, don't go back that far, because I have to think. My big question is this freezer viable? Does it still work? Or is it just something that they had laying out back? Well, if it was laying out back, freezer's not something you just walk by and ignore. Just imagine the power of some witness that might have been peripheral to these people. Prosecution puts them on the stand and said, Mr. Smith, have you ever seen a freezer similar to the one pictured here in the image that you're taking a look at in the past when you've come over for picnics or whatever? Yeah. I've seen one like that. It was out back of the barn. They'd had it for years, and I never could understand what they were keeping that thing for.
Wow. Keeping it for a makeshift casket. When we kill somebody.
You never know.
Wow.
So I hope I'm painting an effective picture here as to how critical all of this is. And I'm so glad, it thrills me to my core that you said that you get one shot at it, Dave. Because once you crack this thing open, you're bearing witness to something that the lion's share of people in their entire life, they live 5 lifetimes. They're not going to see anything like what was revealed when that door was opened, Dave.
Cocktail Maker Bundle, that's BAR.
As you can download the ship.
Masterpiece. This is the now.
Is AA Insurance Exchange.
Breakage is like this most of the Okay, I want all of our friends to understand what I'm about to do here, because we don't get cases like this most of the time. Just this past week, I came into possession of the autopsy report from Ms. Kelley. And I kind of want to break this down, break it down for those that might be curious. And I'll kind of, we'll go through the highlights of it and talk about it. With this proviso, there's a high probability that within the next couple of weeks of this recording, we're going to receive the second autopsy on Ms. Butler. We'll receive that autopsy report. It's at that point in time we'll revisit and kind of go through that autopsy as well, because Dave, the physical findings that you have described here. Remember how we've talked about before, the dead do in fact have a tale to tell. And it can be told in many ways. I think probably the first thing that you're going to look at when you have this kind of miniature, and I want to call it this, miniature crime scene that literally is delivered to the medical examiner's office. When your initial viewing of this, of the interior of this thing, this is like viewing two bodies laying on the floor in a standalone home that have been executed. But yet that dynamic is now brought into the autopsy suite. And so when we crack that door open and we look within this thing, the first thing I'm going to try to piece together here is, well, what position are they in? I think that's probably one of the biggest tells, Dave.
All right. So when they open it up, they look in and they see there's dirt, there's fluid, there's straw, and there are two bodies. And they can tell right off that Veronica Butler is on top of Jillian Kelley. Jillian Kelley had been put in first. Veronica Butler put on top of her. Does that tell you as an investigator anything?
Well, here's the thing, and you can kind of extrapolate some thoughts about this, I believe. You could say that they were killed roughly at the same time and then essentially discarded into this container. Okay. I think probably one of the more chilling views of this, because I don't know if there's any way you could ever convince me that Miss Kelley was the target here, the primary target. Some people could perhaps say that Miss Kelley did die first, and because there's so much hatred and anger directed at the target, who is Veronica Butler, you really wonder, and I'm sure that this is something that it has been explored and is continuing to be explored. I wonder if Miss Butler, in order to terrify her in some way, if she was forced to watch Miss Kelley die. Miss Kelley died pretty quickly, and I can go into that here shortly. And then following that, Miss Butler is killed and her body is placed. And I think placed is kind of a misstatement there. I'm just going to say tossed aside like rubbish into this container. I think my big question is sequencing. I don't know that we will ever be able to address the specific sequence unless one of this, this kind of twisted confederacy rolls over on somebody else that begins to, as they say, sing like a bird. Because I can tell you, I can tell you, well, I'll tell you this, though. This thing's going to be tried in Oklahoma. And Bubba, Oklahoma's got death penalty, and they are not shy about using it. So
and they don't have to negotiate anything. They already have enough evidence, Joe, for all of the involvement of these people, the pre-planning that went into it, the first aborted attempt to drop an anvil on Veronica Butler's car while she's driving. Yeah. Now you've got them there together with Jillian Kelley, wrong place, wrong time, being a nice woman. She ends up dead in a freezer. Now they got to remove Veronica to get to Jillian Kelley. Yeah. They have to take Veronica Butler's body out of the freezer.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you do
Yeah.
to do that?
Yeah,
Because
you
they've
get
been
a
in there
big-
for 2 weeks, man.
Yeah, you get a big group of people. First off, you're going to document the bodies thoroughly inside. I'm talking about not just the measurements of the body, but the measurements of the interior. And this is kind of interesting. I was giving this a think. If you've got any kind of like dynamic blood deposition that's inside of that, okay.
What do you mean by that, Joe?
Well, remember, we got a broken hammer.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that. I think you don't know. You've got a lot of commingled trauma here. I think with Miss Kelley, I don't know if the hammer's been used on her as a means to kill her. It appears, based upon what I'm seeing, that a sharp-edged instrument was used. They don't talk about lacerations, and as we've talked about previously on body bags, lacerations are generated by blunt force trauma. And so that is the skin being struck with something, a baseball bat, ball peen hammer, claw hammer, a lamp, I don't, whatever it might be. The skin literally tears, and that creates a laceration. A laceration is not, and let me repeat, is not a cut. That's not what they're saying about Miss Kelley. Miss Kelley has, and hold on to your hat here, Dave. Miss Kelley alone, and again, keeping in mind, she's not who we would believe to be the primary target, Dave. She's stabbed or cut. She has 16 sharp force injuries. 16. Okay.
And she's not the primary.
And she's not the primary. So I'm very
Can you only
interested to
imagine?
see what Miss Butler's autopsy will reveal, because they would have been doing a dual assessment at this point in time. My suspicion is that though we have Miss Kelley's autopsy report released first, there's a high probability that they did Miss Butler's autopsy secondly. I don't know why it would take longer to get her autopsy out to the public, unless maybe there is more trauma with her body that required further assessment. I'm still not completely ignoring the hammer, that was found, because I don't know what Miss Butler's injuries are at this time. When I see what they did, though, to Miss Kelley, nothing, and I mean nothing, is off the table. And just so, let me break this down further relative to the injuries. So with Miss Kelley, we're talking about 9 stab wounds. That means these are penetrating wounds where the knife is being driven in to an individual, stabbing. Okay. Then we have 7 incised wounds. So just think about cutting an object. If you've got vegetables like they're on a cutting board, okay, you can say they're being chopped, but they're actually being incised or sliced. Well, incised injuries are slices. Okay. So the rule of thumb here is that stab wounds are deeper but more narrow, and incised wounds are longer and shallow. Okay. Now, I've seen incised wounds where they're really, really deep, but those are outliers, okay, for our purposes. And on top of this, she's got 2 more incised wounds that are noted that, well, they're in the description of but they're very distinctive. And Dave, this is a big tell here. Miss Kelley actually has defensive wounds on her hand. Okay,
oh, wow.
Where she's grabbed the blade. She's actually grabbed the blade, and the blade has been drugged through her finger, and it's on both hands. I think one of the incised injuries is the left index finger. Okay. And then the one on the right hand is actually the right thumb. These are not stab wounds to the hands. This is indicative of her trying to defend herself and placing her hands up in a defensive posture, almost like a boxer. And as the knife is coming, you grab it, and then the knife is withdrawn and it cuts that surface. Now, her injuries primarily are lateral and posterior lateral, which means on the side and then to the rear. And Dave, there's nothing other than the hands. The hands are separate. There's nothing on her injury-wise where these incised injuries extend below the level of the shoulder blades. So this is all up top. Well, what does that tell me? That tells me that whoever did this was in close proximity to her. And you say, Morgan, it's kind of obvious. No, it's not. Because you can have somebody that's running away and is being stabbed, and they might random stab. No, these things are concentrated, Dave, and they're really concentrated heavily on the neck. Okay.
They were kill shots. They were trying to kill.
Yeah, they're going
boom,
right.
boom,
Yeah,
boom.
they're going right for the spine. And I'm not going to say luckily here. I'm going to say, how can I phrase this? Mercifully, I hope. Her spinal cord is essentially severed, where if you'll feel the back of your head, okay, find that kind of protuberant area that's on the back of your skull, that bump, that huge bump, that's actually referred to as the occipital protuberance or the occiput. It's part of the brain, it's part of the skull bone. Well, that houses right there, that houses where our cerebellum is, which is separate from the cerebrum. The cerebellum, your brainstem passes through there. That's literally where your spinal cord begins. Dave, her spinal cord, probably at about the C1, which is referred to as the atlas. The atlas is the first vertebral body. They call it atlas because it's like Atlas holding up the world. Her spinal cord is cut right there. And the doctor has actually rendered an opinion here that this is a non-viable insult that she has sustained.
Non-viable, couldn't survive?
Yeah, it's incompatible. What the term they love to use is incompatible with life, because you're now going into, at that level, that cervical level, you're going in affecting the autonomic nervous system. What does that mean? Well, your ability to breathe, your heart to function, to sense, those sorts of things. We can only hope that was the case for Miss Kelley, and under these circumstances. I think that when you begin to do an assessment like this, and they would have done this with both of these bodies. Okay, when her body is removed from this freezer, immediately you could, but you're not going to be very effective. When her body is removed, the first thing you're going to do is X-ray the body. People think about bullets many times leaving that kind of lead storm, the little particulate bits of lead. Dave, did you know that when you stab somebody, particularly if you're striking bone over and over again, the blade will actually shear a bit? And I've actually recovered the tips of blades buried in vertebral bodies where it's been kind of snapped off. And so you would X-ray that, and how powerful is that image? When you put up bloody images from an autopsy report, sometimes they'll say, no, can't use those. They're too prejudicial. You use an image of an X-ray and you show, well, here's a bit of steel or it's radio opaque rather, that's showing up. This is tied back to a knife. This gives you an idea of placement. And you're not having to look through gore. You're just looking at standard X-ray, like you would get for pneumonia or a head injury or neck injury or broken arm. It's the same thing. So there's no gore involved with it. And it's very, very powerful. So you have to be very careful. The only way, though, I think that one of the big questions here is when you read an autopsy report, you're thinking that perhaps you can sequence these injuries. It's really, really hard to sequence an injury. And what I mean by that is the order in which these insults were struck, and what they'll do when you get a knife wound like this, they'll assign a random number, and that random number that you see is not indicative of the order in which it occurred. It's merely there as a guardrail to say, I've identified this one, and this is what we're calling it, number one. And like, for instance, the first one that she sustained, that they're calling wound number one, is a horizontal incised wound to the posterior lower head, which means if you, again, put your hand back here below the occiput, Dave, a knife was drug over the surface of her scalp right there. Okay. And it's literally about 10 centimeters below the top of the head, which I think translates to roughly, I want to say about 3 inches, down the back of her head. So, and it's that's the distance below, and it's about 7 centimeters in length. And it's 3 centimeters deep. This is a deep wound, okay, that's passing through not just the hair and skin and subcutaneous fat. It's going all the way through that little layer of muscle, and also striking the underlying bone. And one of the interesting things I found out about this, Dave, just this wound alone, this is how complex this is. Just this wound alone generated 3 separate knife markings on the surface of the bone, Dave. Okay. That's how ferocious this was. And they're talking about how the lower occiput, or the occipital protuberance, was actually chipped. Do you realize how hard it is to chip a bone? It requires a tremendous amount of power and directed force. So this goes to the idea that I think she would have been attacked while laying probably in a prone position. So she's on her belly. They talked about how her clothes are soiled. Well, if you've got somebody, and I'd used this term earlier with you. I think in the Bible, there's a couple of times where they say the people fell upon an individual. And when they fall upon an individual, that means that's an attack. Okay. So they fell upon this poor woman. I don't know if they've got multiple people holding her down, but the individual would have been exerting their downward weight on her back. Hence, that explains why you don't have injuries that are going any further south than the shoulder blades, because they're not going to stab themselves. Okay. They're going to stab up. Okay. Or not. They're going to be.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense now. I couldn't figure that out when I was reading over this before we started taping. I'm going through this going, what in the world? I couldn't figure that out.
So it's a tight cluster that's in here.
Wow.
And, we're talking about multiple injuries, and it looks like some of these might be misstrikes. Like if you're trying to drive the knife down, let's say you're focused on the spinal column itself, and you have, or, in their mind, the brain. Okay.
Right.
But you're striking the spinal column. This is not like some spy movie where some assassin walks up behind somebody and takes an ice pick or a knife and just kind of pushes it up through the bottom. That classic scene from Goodfellas in the back seat with the ice pick. That's a concentrated, specific area. This is a frenzied event, Dave. Again, I think you can translate that into a lot of anger. And why would this precious woman have this much anger directed at her when she's this, this angel on earth that's trying to help Miss Butler
She's in the way. That's what it was. She was in the way of them getting to Veronica
along the way. So, we've got 16 sharp force injuries that run, essentially from north to south. These things are highly complex. They're going through multiple areas of interest. Many of these things do, in fact, come along with hemorrhage. And as we've discussed, Dave, in the past, if you have an injury and there's indwelling hemorrhage associated with it, then we know that the individual's heart is still beating. Okay, that the blood is coursing through their veins, and because that it's a trauma response, when you clip a vessel, even a capillary like that, a capillary bed, you're going to bleed out into that area. So the doctor is actually seeing, with many of these, is actually seeing presentation of hemorrhage along the way. And one of the more ghastly issues with this is that I hate to even really say this, but Dave, 4 of her cervical vertebrae are involved in this attack. You've got C2, C3, C4, C5. Okay. You've got the bony, if you've ever seen a spinal or a vertebral process, it's got these little horns that stick off of it. Dave, in a couple of spots, those horns have been broken off. Just featured that just for a second. So this attack is absolutely vicious.
She's not the intended target,
and she's not even the intended target, David. That's I think that's my big my big takeaway with this. She's also got, these kind of like, she's got a superficial incised wound that's on the top of left shoulder. There's no associated hemorrhage with that wound. That's a post-mortem injury, but that's on the top. And then if you go down slightly on the posterior left shoulder, so we're talking about the left, if you take your left hand, put it on top of your shoulder, that's the top of your left shoulder. If you go behind it, slightly drop down, just below that area, you've got another shoulder injury in the posterior left shoulder where there is hemorrhage. So they've been they spent quite a bit of time driving this knife both into her body, slicing her body, and as a kind of an added bit here, meeting her parry, which is when it's a sword term. If you're going to parry, it's like a defensive move. She's parrying with her hands, so they've sliced her hands as well defensively. On her part, it's defensively. So you've got all of these injuries that are specifically, tied back, to this poor woman and what led to her death. I think, I'm hoping against hope, Dave, that she did not experience the level of pain that could potentially be associated with all of these insults to her body. I'm hoping against hope that that strike that we talked about, that was like C1, C2 region there, that it was the fatal blow and that she didn't sense anything. But either way that you look at this case, the level of brutality that is involved in this thing, you find it very difficult to plumb the depths of it because it is so very extensive. We're going to wait and see what the autopsy of Veronica Butler reveals. But I can tell you this, whatever happened out there in that desolate area, it's the stuff of nightmares and things that we cannot even begin to fathom. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
Sorry, I had to leave the site. It was really loud. That was really loud. Okay, so Joseph Scott Morgan, he did give you a little more details than I did, I guess, when I read out the autopsy. But just like, what it said in the autopsy report, she was stabbed, incised wounds and stab wounds 16. That's a lot. And he said it looked like a frenzy attack, but to me, it's almost frenzied, but it was still in the same area, like neck, head, neck area, nothing lower. And I was looking it up too, because I've been wanting to know when Veronica's autopsy is going to come out, because I know that Veronica's is going to be a little more detailed. I feel like there's going to be more wounds to Veronica than Jillian, and unless they just got super excited because, Grandma Tiffany was just begging to unalive this girl. She's wanted to do it, tried like 3 times. Maybe they just got caught up in the moment and they unalived her fast. I don't know. I hope that it was fast for both of them. I hope they didn't feel too much pain, but I stab wounds are, I'm sure that they hurt. I'm sure that they hurt. So yeah, that's where you came from. I like this little spot, the little four corners. I thought it looked a little desolate, a little spooky, but other than that, the motive pretty much is custody battle. Tiffany, the grandmother of Veronica's children, they were in a custody of sorts because Wrangler, the father of the children, of their two children, he was in rehab. So the grandmother was taking care of the kids, and Veronica was trying to get custody back of her kids. She had just got a place that she was living in. She had a new job. Like she had like her own little business. It looked really cute too, the little store that they showed. So she had, I think it was like a florist business or something like that. She's a florist, but she was doing, or maybe, no, I don't think it was florist. I want to say yoga, maybe. It was something like that, like, I don't know, like artsy. She was really trying to get her life back in order. So then instead of, the grandmother being the grandmother and giving her children back, being like, okay, I did my job as the grandmother. I helped, Grandma Tiffany wasn't ready to get rid of them. She tried to like hurt her before. Thanks, Jamie's Cowboys. That's very sweet. It's very sweet. She's not a grandma, no. She's can you, and I want to know about the whites. So there's this couple, and now I can't think of their name, their first name, Lucy, I think in chat or something like that, Chris White. But they're married and they're in the God's Misfits as well. So they're the last two members of this God's Misfits group. So the kids were at their house the night before Jillian and Veronica were murdered. So what I don't get is, how are they not involved in this somehow? Because why would Tiffany of all nights take them over there to spend the night before she knew she had to meet Veronica and Jillian at 10 o'clock in the morning? Normally you wouldn't do that. And she kept the kids there until 12 o'clock that afternoon and then went and picked them up. So that wasn't suspicious to the White family neither. Like, Veronica gets her kids every weekend, but this weekend, all of a sudden, we're babysitting them. They're spending the night with us, and now we're giving them back at 12 o'clock the next afternoon. No one thought, they didn't think about that. So they're listed in the affidavit. So they're the last two people that they're listed first, I believe, but they're the last two of the God's Misfits that are in the affidavit. I'm wondering if Paul Grice is going to say something. I don't know. He's already talking, so he wants the deal. I would want a deal if I was him too. But he physically unalived one of these women. He wasn't just the person that waved him around, through or anything like that. He was one of the ones that was just in it. So I don't know. I am about an hour behind on the chat, probably. I probably am. What are you guys talking about? I just let you go wild in here. Were these women tortured before? We don't know. There was red stuff on the scene, and there was a broken hammer. Now that I think they did something with the hammer with maybe Veronica, and that's why, because Jillian doesn't have the her body was so decomposed, but it doesn't look like she has the wounds of a hammer. That's a beating too. So, but let me know if you have any questions over anything. We did a 2-hour live tonight. I knew it was going to be a longer live. That's why I came on a little bit earlier. Now I've got to figure out how to get all this stuff off my face. I put on dark eyeshadow tonight, and I never do that. I never do that. Confirmed, yes, Squeaky. That is confirmed. Yep. Breaking news. That's not breaking news, though. We've known that for a while. I told Vincent that earlier. Well, I told Vincent earlier that you like Joseph's. I was like, she loves Joe Scott Morgan, and he kind of looked at me kind of funny, and I said, if she likes dudes, and he's like, oh, okay, okay. We need to get Joseph Scott Morgan down there. You love the longer lives. I don't mind doing longer lives. I just we usually do them. I mean, we usually do longer lives, but I've been trying to keep them a little bit shorter if we do more than one a day, you know. But it doesn't really look like there's too much going on out there tonight. Let me see what's going on out here over on X. Thank you, Ladybug. That's so sweet of you. Thanks for all the updates on the cases, Tanya. This is the best channel in chat. Oh, I love y'all. That's so sweet. Thank you, sweet Melissa. I appreciate that. I was like, I'm going to go with this really super dark color tonight, and that's how we're going to roll. And I usually don't wear makeup, but I just started wearing it again. Like, I don't know why. So if you catch me not wearing it, don't be too spooked. But thank you so much, Ladybug. That's so sweet. Thanks for the super chat. I always forget to heart that one's over here on the side. Come in with the sky blue eye. That would have been. I was thinking about something the other day. I was thinking about people that like, you know how everyone's kind of been messing with everyone on YouTube lately, like on the tubes, like, you know, like bullying and stuff like that. No one can bully me until you've lost an eyeball, until you can take an eye out of your face. No one can bully me over here. That's what I'm going to start saying to people. Plus it's a cool party trick. It's a really cool party trick, you know? Just kidding. I've never taken it in and out before in front of anyone. Thank you, Mary Beth, who got gifted the membership. Canvas and Crime. Man, we're trying to get Aries. Wonder what happened to Aries. Maybe it only gifts so many times and then it doesn't gift. Right, Ashley? Yep. There. Speaking of the devil, there he is. It was okay. We just chit-chatted. We didn't chit-chat about anything too good. No, it was like, what did we talk about? See, it wasn't that good. Or I'd have remembered. I was wondering where you were, Aries. I was wondering. We just went over the Jillian Kelley case. Whoops. Okay. So there was a body found in Hickman County, I guess, and that's in Tennessee, and it's not Sebastian Rogers. So, I guess people, I don't know, someone just said confirmed it's not him. So I'm assuming people are going around and they're going to say that, you know, it is him, or they think it's him. So they have, you know, I don't know, something to go with. But I did want to tell you guys that Nancy Grace did another video on Ellen Greenberg. And like, I don't know, I feel like something's about to pop off on her case. You know, the one that didn't unalive herself. So we might have to go through it tomorrow. I'm curious, very curious to know. Still haven't heard anything about Emma Baum, the pregnant woman that we were talking about last night. Nothing's been said yet. There's a guy rescuing a deer from a creek or a lake. I love those little, they get me. Wow, these people are still stuck on this ride? Or are they off of it? There was people stuck on a ride at Knoxberry Farms, and that's where Vincent's dad used to like to go. What did I thought I saw something. So I don't know what this is. It just says Jesse Vang pleads not guilty to charges in connection with 3-year-old's death. So he can do that all he wants. I don't see anything else though. I'm trying to see if I can see if there was anything to tell you guys about, but it doesn't really look like there is. I think everyone's just kind of maybe taking the night off of torturing each other. 'Cause I don't see any. Oh, also, remember how Dog the Bounty Hunter was in Tennessee? Yeah, his daughter got married. That's why he was in Tennessee. like, you can't make this stuff up. You made it look, Dog. You made it look like you were coming here to look for Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers. Like that's just pitiful. That is pathetic, and that's wrong. That is wrong. Wrong. Oh, did some of them? Did all the? I don't. I don't like roller coasters, Aries. But I told you before, you love them and I hate them. You can ride them all, and I would watch you. Uncomfortably numb. Oh, you're welcome. You're so welcome. And if you need anything, let us know. You're welcome, Jamie's Cowboys. Okay, yeah, send me it, Ashley. Sorry, I was lost in the sauce there for a minute. They're off the ride. Okay. That's my fear of like being. That's one. I mean, that's my like lowest of the totem pole of fears. But of being stuck on a ride. Yeah. Well, I hope that there's never not a time that you can't go on a roller coaster, Aries, because I know how much you love them. Well, I do talk with Carrie some. She does the Facebook group. And I told her we need to get together and do a video. I know that she just lost her daughter, I believe. So yeah. Yeah, I do see him in the chat. Yeah. Yeah, so of course, yeah. We've been covering it since it started. And we'll be back with all the details that we can get. Yeah, that's very sweet that you guys got each other's backs. Yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this for a little while. I said in the beginning of the live, I just wanted to wait for the family to have a chance to kind of read it and get their mind around, almost around it. I mean, I don't think you can ever even wrap your mind around something like this, but before I just ran out and, screamed it to the whole world, but hopefully we read it okay and we did everything okay. So, but I think that's all I have for you guys for tonight. I'm going to see what these girls want to do. I got one over here, one over here. It was so funny. They were all in the bed today, and the one that Reba made, they different times. It was very adorable. Well, thank you, Mary Beth. That's very sweet. No, I haven't, Aries. Oh, it's alive and well in Oklahoma. Yeah, they're not afraid to use the death penalty. Your speeding ticket, speeding. Oh, no, DP. No, I'm kidding. It's not like that. But they use it. I think that they are like the second. I think it's like Texas and then Oklahoma now. It used to be Texas, I think, then Florida, but Oklahoma's up there. I didn't know that up until this case. And I looked because I was curious to know myself. And prayers for, families, friends of these victims. Even my heart even goes out to, Cora and Cole Twombly's children and stepchildren, like, stepchildren. Like, they didn't sign up for this, especially the daughter, having her going and cleaning out the truck. I mean, that's dirty. You don't do that to your kids, your stepchildren, or whatever, And it's so sad because Veronica was there. She was getting there in her life, like we all have that where we need a little help, and she was getting that, and she was doing that plus more to be able to get her children back. And that's sad. That's sad. I hope that it was fast for them, and I hope that the justice is fast too. But it doesn't look like they want it to be. I do have that one little like mock setup of them in court, like where it looks like where they're going to be sitting. So we'll have to go through that again on the next live. But thank you guys so much for being here tonight. We're I will say, yeah, that's a good idea. Put some sunflowers in the chat. I believe that was her favorite flower. One of them. Was it Veronica's or Jillian's favorite flower? Either way, beautiful flowers. Beautiful. I don't know. I'm a smaller sunflower girl. The big ones kind of spooked me a little bit. But I do love flowers nonetheless. What girl doesn't? But can Ohio trade New York some water? We could try. Aries. Oh, really? Drought warning? Oh, because you guys had that fire down there in Manhattan. They had that big fire. It's very controlling and coldish. Yeah. But we will be here tomorrow evening at 9:15, 8:15, 9:15, somewhere around there. I may come on during the daytime and do a live on the other channel, or may just do a members live on the other channel, but we may do both. You never know with me. Sometimes I just like to do some lives during the day. But thank you for being here. I do appreciate you guys tonight. And rest in peace, Veronica and Jillian. And I hope that the families can have a little bit of comfort and peace, just a little bit, feel a little bit of that. So thank you guys so much for being here. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Be good to each other. Lock your doors. Get your dogs out. If you know what I mean. If you got dogs like me that protect you, or the cat, get them all out. Make sure your windows are locked and your doors are locked. And I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Bye, guys.